These are uncertain times, but my message to you today is we're going to be here for you. Small and medium-sized businesses are the backbone of our economy. You are collectively the largest employer in the country. You support millions of families. You serve our communities, and you make our towns and cities better places to live. Canadians are counting on you, and I am counting on you to come back strong from this, no matter what comes next.
The Prime Minister says relief for small and medium-sized businesses is on the way. Hi there, and welcome to Power and Politics. I'm Vashi Capellos. Last week, the feds had announced a 10% wage subsidy. Immediately, businesses said that was just a drop in the bucket. So here's what Ottawa came back with. That wage subsidy, it's going up. Ottawa will now cover 75% of wages for up to 3 months, and the subsidy will be backdated to March 15th. There aren't specific details yet, though, on who qualifies for it exactly and whether there will be a cap. The feds will backstop $40,000 loans through banks. Those loans will be interest-free for a year. Businesses with payrolls of less than $1 million will qualify. If certain conditions are met, the government says $10,000 of that loan could be entirely forgiven. Also, businesses and self-employed individuals don't have to make any GST and HST payments until June or any customs duties on imports. Separately from the feds today, big news out of the Bank of Canada. It made it even cheaper to borrow money, lowering the key interest rate to 0.25%. That is the second unscheduled cut since this crisis started, and the governor of the bank said today that's as low as he can go. We're going to ask the government about all of this next hour. First, though, we want to get some reaction from those who have been advocating for this specific kind of aid. Dan Kelly is the president of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Jerry Dias is the national president of Unifor, and Perrin Beatty is the president of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Hi to all three of you. Thank you very much for making time for us.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ashley.
Dan, I want to start with you. The CFIB released the results of its survey over last weekend, which showed that a third of small and medium-sized businesses didn't even think they'd make it a month. How significant do you think this announcement is?
Well, look, if the details are as good as the headlines are, this will be big. Many companies have been trying as best they can to pay their employees out of savings or out of personal income from the business owner in order to keep them afloat, making decisions day by day as to how many they're going to have to lay off and when. And for many, this will be a lifeline. They'll be able to keep those employees on their payroll, making sure that they can get them to their next paycheck. The announcement sounds pretty good. I was most impressed. It was essentially what we were asking for.
Jerry, you've been asking for this as well. We spoke just a few days ago about the impact some of the people you represent are already feeling. Your initial impression of what you heard from the government today?
Well, I'm pleased, obviously. It's not often that Dan, Perrin, and myself are singing from the same song sheet. But this shows, frankly, that the government is listening. It's clear that they're listening to business community, the labor movement, listening to Canadians, more importantly, and they knew they had to do something. I mean, they're following the lead, of countries, the Scandinavian countries, European countries, but this is an incredible first step, and it'll be significant, but I think we need to also concentrate on some of the other things, like the Canadian Emergency Response Fund is $500 a week, when average Canadians are making over $1,000 a week. So I think if you take a look at EI, we really do need EI reform. We need to waive the 1 week waiting period. We need to increase to 55%. So look, this is a time for bold decisions, and they're acting, and I appreciate it. But now we need to take a look at some of the other things to make sure that we have a strong economy when we get through this.
Perrin, this follows the government's initial announcement about some other aid measures, particularly kind of a bit of what Jerry was referring to there, and that's the CERB, the sort of emergency fund, about $2,000 a month for 4 months. How does this, I guess, as a policy measure, what is your assessment of the effectiveness of the wage subsidy? Like, who does it help, and how much can it help?
It's going to help hundreds of thousands of Canadian small businesses that would otherwise have gone out of business, and millions of others. If this had not taken place, if you look down the main street of any community in Canada, when those stores' doors closed, they weren't going to reopen. So this is big news. It's something that is exceptionally important. And what it does is it gives for workers, It means that their benefits are going to continue. It means that they have the social benefit that comes from being part of an organization at a time when everybody's under enormous stress. And it means they have a job to go back to when we emerge again from our homes to go back to work. This was an incredibly important decision, and just in the nick of time.
I mentioned off the top there, Dan, that there are still some crucial details that are missing. Namely, they kept using the phrase qualified businesses. So we don't know the details of exactly which businesses or under what terms they will qualify. The other thing we don't know is in the 10% wage subsidy that the government announced a little bit ago, there was a cap, and we don't know yet if the cap will exist here. Can you talk a bit about what details have yet to be answered from your perspective and what you'd like to see as the sort of answer to those unanswered questions?
Sure. There's a few big ones. Most notably, will it apply to the self-employed or sole proprietorships or partnerships that have staff? We're getting lots of questions because the previous program didn't. The other is, how high will the cap go? I get that there should probably be a cap per employee, so that you're not guaranteed, that the limit is closer to the EI limit of perhaps about $5,000 a month. But we don't believe that there should be a limit on per employer. It should be on the entire payroll. The last program had $25,000 as a cap, which isn't going to get too many even very small firms past a couple of weeks. So those are a few of the things that we're watching really closely. We have thousands of calls pouring into CFIB's offices right now, asking for details that we just don't have. So I'm hoping over the course of the weekend or by Monday at the latest, the government does that. Most importantly, though, they've signaled to the small business community that this is going to happen. We have members that are making decisions in real time, some today that said that they were going to call back workers that they had already laid off. And that's exactly what we need to have happen if we're going to give some of those employees, as Perrin said, the psychological assurance that they have a job to come back to.
Jerry, speaking of layoffs, I know the last time we spoke, you were getting call after call after call, news of more layoffs. What's the latest you can tell us? And when you speak of other things you want to see the government lead on, you want to see the government act on, tell us a bit more of what you'd like to see.
Well, first of all, we need to clarify what the 75% and who it includes. They're talking about small and medium businesses, but I will argue there's some large businesses that are in deep trouble. Businesses that are over what qualifies as medium, which are going to need some help. Also, does it include nonprofit organizations? Does it include NGOs? There's a lot of people that should be covered by the 75%, and it's not clear yet if they are. We are looking right now at a shutdown of a lot of the forestry sector in Western Canada. That's combined with major manufacturing from coast to coast to coast. Our union right now has it anywhere probably well over 125,000, maybe close to 150,000 if the forestry sector goes down. So we're looking at significant numbers, and these are high-paying workers across the country. So what is going on is catastrophic. And I'm glad that the government is moving, but I hope they understand that there's a lot more to do before they're finished.
Perrin, when you look towards Monday, when we are expected to get some more details on this particular announcement, but also throughout the week and the coming days when we are looking for different announcements from the Prime Minister, from the federal government, where economic help is concerned, what are you watching for specifically?
Well, in this particular area, some of the details that we've been talking about over the course of the last couple of minutes want to know exactly what the application is for this. My understanding is their intention is to cast the net as broadly as they can. If that's so, that's the right approach to take. And it is correct as well. There are a number of very large businesses and sectors of the economy that are going to require tailored assistance as well to make sure we have something to go back to when the immediate health threat is over with. And then we have to look at how are we managing all of this, and are we mobilizing the resources that are out there in the business community to be able to supply what's necessary for frontline medical workers and to provide medical help and so on. Have we properly designated what essential services are so that so society can continue to be supplied during this difficult period with the goods that it needs? Do we understand the way in which supply chains are running across provincial boundaries to make sure that they can function properly? So there's still an enormous amount to be done, but today was a very good day.
Dan, not everything comes from federal governments. Provincial governments are making a series of announcements too. I've received a lot of communication from small business owners today who say, yes, this helps me for sure in one aspect, but I'm also worried about paying the rent. And rent is a big issue. And if I can't pay the rent, then, to a certain degree, it helps to be able to keep people employed, but I can't. It's going to be too difficult. What other kind of measures do you think, especially small and medium-sized businesses, need to see?
Well, look, this was a big one. The two biggest expenses our members tell us about in the small and medium-sized business community. Number one is wages, and this may help many businesses at the federal level. Number two are their fixed costs, particularly rent or real estate. And in my opinion, if the provinces can come to the table with some meaningful rent and property tax relief, we have a fighting chance of seeing some, not all, but some of our small businesses get through this terrible, terrible period. What I think that they need to do, first of all, provinces need to say to cities, stop the property tax bills. We'll pick up commercial property taxes while businesses are shut down. And on top of that, I think that provinces should prohibit commercial evictions of businesses if they can't pay their rent, just as they have for residential renters. Finally, this is off-brand for us at CFIB, but I think provinces should actually pick up some of the rental costs. Remember, governments have ordered businesses to close, and it's unfair for the societal benefits of social distancing to fall squarely on the shoulders of small business owners to pick up the tab. So I think this is an unusual situation, and provinces should come to the table with rent relief for small and medium-sized companies.
I just have time for a quick final comment from each of you. Jerry first.
First of all, I'd like to remind Dan and Perrin of all the debates we've had about raising of minimum wage, which you disagreed with, the whole issue of government legislating sick pay, which you disagreed with, and of course, increasing of premiums from CPP and QPP. These are the workers today that are the COVID heroes. They're the ones that are personal support workers, work in grocery stores. They're the ones that deserve all of our respect and support. So I'll remind you two of this the next time we debate.
Well, we'll be hosting that debate at some point, hopefully in much better times. Perrin, last word to you.
Jerry, it's great to see you maintain your natural gregariousness throughout all of this. We'll look forward to that debate. We'll have plenty of time to fight in the future. Today is a day for celebration.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you to all three of you for your time this evening. I really appreciate it. Thanks to Dan Kelly, Perrin Beatty, and Jerry Dias. For more on the government's announcement of financial aid for small and medium-sized businesses today, Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the NDP, joins us right now. Hi, Mr. Singh. Nice to see you. Mr. Singh, can you hear me? I feel like there's a technical difficulty. Can you hear me now, Mr. Singh?
I can hear you, yes.
You hear me? Great. Hi there. Thanks very much for making time for us.
Of course.
So you had been on the forefront of asking the government to increase the subsidy. It was initially announced, just for our viewers who are maybe just joining us now, to be 10% of wages for up to 3 months, a cap of $25,000 per employer. You were really pushing to increase the wage subsidy. Did what you hear today go far enough?
It looks like a really good step. We've been long calling for over a week now. I've been saying that other countries have been offering wage subsidies of 75% or more. And so I've been calling on the government to deliver 75% or more wage subsidy to provide more help for small businesses. Really, we want to make sure people are going to have a job to go back to, and a wage subsidy of at least 75% will give small businesses a fighting chance to keep people on the payroll so that they can actually have a job to return to. We know that with 1 million people applying for EI in 1 week alone, this is a massive crisis that our country is in, and we have to do everything we can to help out small businesses, particularly those in the service sector, restaurants, and other service industry that have been really hard hit. We've got to do our part, and this is a good announcement that looks like it's going to help out small businesses and, most importantly, help people keep their jobs.
So there were a few details the government did not provide today, and one that we particularly heard from businesses could be extra meaningful, and that is whether or not there's going to be a cap per employer. What is your advice to government on that?
Well, our goal should be, we should be motivated by the principle of it is a lot better for us to be able to keep someone employed through their place of employment so they have a job to return to, so they don't need to go on EI, than it is for someone to lose their job, to have to apply for this new fund, which is better than EI. It's going to allow for a lot more people to apply and access it. But imagine a business that's got to rehire and retrain. Imagine a worker that's not going to be able to have a job and try to find a new job. It's much better to ensure we give support so that people can remain employed. So that's going to be the guiding principle that I'm going to encourage.
How do you think that impacts the decision around a cap? Do you think there should be one, or if there is one, it should be higher?
Yeah, it would, in my opinion, it would mean that the cap should be quite high, if any at all, to ensure that we're giving enough support to businesses. The other proposal around low interest loan with a certain portion that could be forgiven, so effectively a grant, is also a good idea. I think we need to look at what amount should be forgiven. I think we might need to consider a larger amount, given how deep the impact of this crisis is going to be on everybody in our country. Yeah,
I think the amount that the government said today could be forgiven, and I'm not clear exactly on the circumstances under which yet that it might be, but was a quarter of it. So it's a $40,000 loan, interest-free for a year. 10,000 of that could be forgiven, and you'd be advocating for more than 10,000?
Well, I think that's a good measure, and from speaking to some of the people impacted, some small business owners, some restaurant owners, it might need to be higher. I think we need to monitor that and look at how much the uptake is, how many people actually are able to access it, and then depending on how long this crisis lasts and how much people are impacted, looking at what amount should be forgiven. I think we should be flexible and be ready to be nimble on moving that number if need be.
I wanted to ask you also about an issue I understand your party hears about. I know we get a lot of viewers writing in about this too, and that has to do with interest and credit, particularly the interest rates that they're seeing right now on their credit cards. The federal government says that they're in talks with the banks, but today when Minister Morneau was asked, there weren't a lot of specifics given about where those conversations are. What is your party's position on that? What would you like to see the federal government do about these interest rates?
Well, I would say, actually, even in the best of times, the 18, 19, 20% or higher credit card interest rates are far too high. They make no sense. They're a leftover from the past when interest rates were so much higher, and it might have made some sense, but it makes no sense nowadays when interest rates are so low. So I would be calling for really just lowering those to effectively getting rid of those high interest rates. It makes no sense. They should be in line with what people are able to get as a loan at a bank. They should be in line with what the interest rates are, so they should be much lower. I think predatory lending we see from payday loans, those need to end. People are desperate for money, and they're gonna go to places where there is available credit, and often it's high interest, predatory, in fact, and that needs to stop. And I've also said that when all this is happening, we need to put a pause on mortgage and rent and utilities. People are being asked to stay at home, which is a good thing, but they don't have income coming in and they still have bills going out. So we need to really clamp down on interest rates, but also on mortgage, rent, utilities, put a pause on these things for now and allow people to have some breathing room so they can get through this crisis.
What do you see as, I guess, the federal government's role in all of this? Because a lot of what you just talked about, for example, mortgage deferrals, we're getting a lot of emails in, a lot of people writing in that they're upset that they go to the bank if they're able to get through. They're still penalized even if they defer their mortgage. Do you see a role for the federal government in mitigating some of that?
I do. I mean, some of the things like the pause on rent would have to be something we work with provinces on. Mm-hmm. But on mortgages, there's more of a direct role that the federal government can play with financial institutions. I think we can absolutely play a stronger role in making sure we negotiate or just use the powers that we have to say that in a crisis, people should not have to worry about losing their homes. We know that businesses are also worried about, restaurants are worried about the cost of rent, commercial rent. In this time, if we're asking everyone to stay in and stay safe, then we need to take some really drastic measures to make sure people are not going to lose their homes and businesses aren't going to have to give up their business, give up their dream because of the cost of commercial rent. So I think we need to get to a point where we're pausing all of these things, mortgage, rent, utilities, giving people that breathing room so that people can still have a place to call home. It's also a public health issue. Imagine if people lose their home in this crisis when we're asking people to self-isolate, then not only do we have a homelessness crisis, but also a public health emergency where people are going to not have a home to isolate within. So they're going to have to go to family or friends and maybe sleep on the couch. It's going to be a horrible situation. So we can prevent that now if we take the right decisions.
We just listened to the Premier of Alberta, Jason Kenney, he made an announcement actually just about that. They're freezing rents, they're freezing evictions for the duration of the public state of emergency in that province. He was also talking about, and we were just discussing with some economists, the impact of the drastic decrease in oil prices. I think a barrel of Canadian oil is selling for between $5 and $7 right now. Obviously, that has a huge impact, not only on the energy sector in Alberta and Newfoundland and Labrador, for example, and Saskatchewan, but also on those provinces' revenue stream. They are looking to the federal government for help. Your party has in the past specifically been opposed to subsidies to the oil and gas sector. In this case, is your position different?
Well, this is a very different situation. We have the entire collapse of the economy of multiple provinces, and we have people that are up against not just a minor setback in terms of job losses, but massive job losses, the likes of which we've never seen before. So we need to actually step in and provide support for people. My main focus, though, when it comes to the type of help that we should deliver, has to be help that goes to the working people, goes to the workers that have lost their jobs, those that have already lost their jobs and are now seeing that they're not going to get them back, and then a whole slew of new folks that are going to no longer have a job when they wake up in a couple of days. Those people need help, and they need it in a serious way, in an urgent way, and I would support those type of measures.
What about for the producers who employ a number of people in those provinces? The Premier was just, for example, talking about money from the federal government, backstop money to increase liquidity for producers. Is that something you would support in these circumstances?
Again, I think my lens would be that as long as the supports that we're giving are tied into jobs and into investments in Canada, I don't want the scenario that we've seen in the past where we make investments or offer incentives to a company for that company to just take those dollars, those public dollars, and then shut down the jobs, shut down the business, and open up in another jurisdiction in another country. That can't happen. So for me, it really has to be any supports that we give have to be backed up with a really serious commitment and guarantee with some enforceability that there's going to be jobs that they're tied to, there's going to be investments in those provinces that are hard hit, and it's not just money that's given without any strings attached.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Mr. Singh, thanks so much for making time for us this evening. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you so much. My pleasure.
That's the leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.